If I have to leave a week, are we good?
Yeah, we have to do it.
Like, I can stay for a little bit. I'll find out, you know, we just got a 12-year-old, somebody just trying to snatch out of the school. That's, okay,
Yeah.
a whole nother thing. It's just not.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. The Pathways and Gun Violence Advisory Council. Madam Clerk, will you take roll call, please?
How are you?
Chairperson Miguel Sanchez,
President.
co-chair Corey Jones,
President.
co-chair Diana Garlington is absent. Kathir Monokaran. Alan Williams,
Here.
Detective David Perez,
Yeah.
Michael Stevens.
Yeah.
Robert Bailey is absent. James Montero is absent. Lisa Pino Warren. Here. Juan Carter is absent. Michael Hogan is absent, but he's virtual.
Yes.
And PJ Fox is absent, so we have 7 present, 6 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you. But just for housekeeping, rules, if one of the members has to leave, we can still continue the meeting, but we just can't vote on matters, or how does that work?
There's gonna be no, you won't be able, if you had anything to vote on, you wouldn't be able to vote, it'd be more informational than anything.
All right, thank you. That might, occur during this meeting, just a heads up.
Oh.
Can you read item number 2, I guess? We can move on. I guess you don't need to read, I can read it. Follow up, from previous meeting. The first bullet point is update on CVI funding. Does anyone have an update on that? I think that might be more of like PJ's.
Yeah, I have no update.
All right,
I haven't heard any bad news yet, so.
that's no news, is good news.
Right, listen,
I think PJ was also on the United Way talking point too, right? He's the one that took that task.
Diana, yeah, she did Diana. Well, Mike, do you have any update on CBI funding? Can you hear us?
I have nothing to report. Everything that the Department of Justice passes through is all been pulled while they look at the language and add stuff to it. So there really aren't any competitive opportunities, and any new ones that come down are going to have new restrictions that didn't exist previous. So something to be wary of when we're looking at applications. It will say in the notice of funding opportunity if it's going to have the immigration or other federal priorities attached to it. So we're just waiting to see.
Can you get the door closed? I guess I skipped over the bullet point of the mentorship pilot program, the central hub concept. I believe that is speaking towards the ideas about Kennedy Plaza. I don't think anyone has really, taken up the lead on this.
Yeah, I talked to the superintendent, and, we did this morning like a program with some community members where we just like give the kids handshakes if they're coming into, the school building. And, I think there could be some ownership at the school level. I'm not sure what that exactly looks like because, it's one thing to do an initiative one school at a time, is another thing to cover multiple routes. But there could also be some changes in the budget possibly, or some conversation with school staff about their support. So we're hoping to have a sit down and talk more about it. But I think it's something that the school district is going to be interested in supporting as well.
And definitely just want to notate for the committee or the council, this seemed like there was some like bus changes at RIPTA that Val mentioned a couple meetings ago that should be helping with just the congestion of so many kids at the same time. Does anyone from law enforcement have any updates or anything on that matter of Candy Plaza? Some of the, I'm sorry, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Lieutenant Patrick Parker. I took over the downtown area as of December, so I'm about 3 or 4 months deep into it now. I haven't seen the nice weather yet, you know, because I think the cold weather kind of drove people to where kids to where they wanted to end the day. Last couple of weeks, we have been having some, you know, more juveniles hanging out down there. We haven't, knock on wood, had any problems yet. I don't know, some of the stuff I was gonna talk about later may help with that. We're gonna continue to do some of these programs that I'm gonna talk about going forward. Having some of the same officers down there, but yeah, I mean, we're monitoring it and we haven't had any issues right now.
And can you confirm, do you guys have patrol officers there at dismissal time?
Yeah, so I have dedicated bike and foot officers that are down there. So there's some continuity every day. They see, pretty much the kids see the same officers. The officers are aware of the different schools that are being dropped off into the plaza at any given time. So they have a better understanding of the overall process.
Right.
So that helps, as well as a detail that that Ripta has provided that has an additional couple of officers down there for a presence as well.
If I could ask a question, to Corey, so in regards to the handshake initiative, have you spoken to, Chief of Police in Central Falls, Anthony Robeson? Because he was actually the initiator of that, initiative. I know Kobe is kind of taking the lead on that now. It's definitely a great initiative. I think it would definitely, probably in the best interest to reach out to, Anthony Robeson as well.
Thank you.
Yes,
Central Falls?
yes, correct. Yeah, Chief of Police Central Falls.
How does one get connected with that initiative for you? Is it kind of just word of mouth?
I just got an email invite. I didn't even know what I was walking into.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Kobe's doing it for a couple months now.
Yeah, when Robeson was doing it, probably, we were doing that maybe 6, 7 years ago, easy. Years. Yeah, years ago, for sure. So, yeah, but it's an open initiative, and it's great. You wouldn't believe how you feel.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Shaking the hands of the kids, so it's a great initiative.
Awesome. So I guess like, we don't really need to decide now, but do you guys, it seems like there's not a lot of appetite right now to, you know, keep pursuing a mentorship program, at least like. Where anyone in like the city would be like outside of the school department taking a lead on that, I'm not sure. You guys want to keep exploring this or?
I mean, I think, excuse me, I forgot his name already. What is it?
Lieutenant Potter.
Oh, yeah, Patrick.
Well, hello, nice to meet you. I think what he said, right now, we're not seeing a lot, but as soon as spring
Right.
hits, we're going to start to see some traction. This is what happens every single year. So we may not, I think we should still continue to have the conversation, and I don't think it's, I think it's a community-wide approach. So I think we really have to, I like the idea of the school department being involved, but also too, the school department closes for the summer,
Correct.
right? So, I think it has to be a community-wide effort.
And so I think he can later on talk about some of this thing that he's already starting to do to prepare for the spring or in the summer. So it will give him a chance to be able to explain what he's been doing so far to try to work with some of the issues down at Candy Plaza.
Another question I have is like, is the goal of this group, I know in the last administration, there was a similar advisory council that sort of produced a report. Is the goal of this report to even produce a report with the initiatives that we recommend, so that we have mentioned, I don't know, like resource and asset map and a few other initiatives, so if you identify that it's sort of synthesize that these are the initiatives that the group collectively recommends, or that we're trying to sort of find funding to fund specific initiatives and sort of assign them out to different partners or entities within the city, or is it a combination of both? Because like, we can still do mentoring, we just might not be able to like do it now if the goal is to have a final report that we publish as a recommendation.
Right, yeah, I would definitely say it's a combination of both. I mean, it's really up to us, but like when we did create this group, the idea was to have a report at the end of the year. Also like asset managing of what's out there and what gaps we could identify and hopefully uplift. I know there's been a lot of conversations on the emphasis of not duplicating or overlapping work, so trying to do that type of work, I think is important as well. So yeah, I would definitely say a combination of seeing what's out there and what's needed, and also providing that in the report. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think like the asset mapping, I think the council staff, we're gonna take on some of that work for us, so, if they have an update. Maybe we can check for the next meeting and see if they have an update on some of the asset mapping that we handed off to them. But yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think often too many committees get together and they just write a report and, I think at some point we need to get our hands, a little dirty and get on the ground and do some of the work. And I think that the handshake initiative this morning was like motivation to me, because it was like, it can just be so simple, right? It can just be a calendar invite, and all of us show up, right? And, it was some fire was there, some community members was there, some staff from, the SUP's office was there, and school board members were there. And, I think that had a large impact and, those young people seeing us and, building a relationship with us gives us influence, over time, right? Where maybe if there's some incident happens, we can build a relationship and leverage that relationship in the future. So yeah, I think at some point, maybe we just go to Kennedy Plaza and, right, and, the law enforcement in the building can support us, make sure that, we don't go there blind. But, I think at some point we gotta roll our sleeves up, right? But then also I think that planning and putting on paper what we did is helpful, to kind of carry the torch and make it known where we put it, roll our sleeves up and make a difference, right?
So yeah, I guess just to also add on that, and then if you just make sure the record reflects not Robert, the shoulders.
Yep.
Thank you.
Don't note it.
Robert. Yeah, I think something, we gotta keep at the forefront is the community violence intervention and certain policies around that. But that was like one of the main motivating factors in starting this committee is like. We know so many different policies across the country and even here in Rhode Island have been working for years now, and how can we as community members, city folks, uplift and expand CVI policies across the city.
Yeah. And like, again, like the Kennedy Plaza thing is, I later went and searched it up and like, wait, this is actually a CVI intervention of the school safe passage model, right? So, and, some people did it volunteer, some people had paid staff do it, right? So it's been done both ways. They did say when you do it volunteer, there's a level of risk and, you need that CBO support and, that police support, yeah.
Does anyone else have anything on what has been discussed so far before we move on to next topic? All right, review progress on legislation to fund CVI through firearm related taxes.
Yeah, so, it's not gonna happen this legislative session, but my understanding is that there's a bill that's drafted and, there's.
Can you just remind folks what?
Yeah, so in 2019, I wanna say, Gina Raimondo put a budget article in her budget that would put a 6% tax on gun sales, on, ammo and on, shooting ranges and shooting ranges membership that would go towards the general fund. Our suggestion is we bring back that tax. It didn't make it through the General Assembly, Mattiello at the time killed it. And my suggestion is we bring that back, but we make it a restricted fund for CBI. And that way, we can have a consistent funding source for the work that's happening at this table and for folks like the Nonviolence Institute. But so the update on that is that Representative Jennifer Boylan is going to be the sponsor on that. And I believe there is a bill drafted. And now we are in the point of her connecting with all the different folks at the table, and, sometime next year, we are hoping to enter that bill into the legislature and, doing some type of work to turn out community members to fight for that bill. And then also, I think this group to be useful and maybe writing a letter to her or something saying, okay, this is what we identified as what needs to be funded. And that bill could serve to fund those things. I think it'd be somewhere between like $1.2 million. Fine. I can put my update.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, new discussion topics. First bullet point is outreach partnership with different city departments. Who was taking the lead on this? Anyone have notes for last meeting?
I think light things came up.
I brought mine with me.
Oh, okay. No, I think it was the last meeting. It's like Mike's meeting.
Think you were here last meeting.
I wasn't.
Can we check the record to see was he here last meeting?
No, Mike, honestly, the one prior to, I was like, they were like, Mike.
I might have been Robert that
It was
volunteered.
Robert.
Oh, yeah. Nice guy.
So they said you would have some insight, Mike, that we probably weren't really to at that point. So, yeah.
We might have to hold off for next meeting on that one. I think it was I think it was whoever was on our city council.
Council staff,
Council.
mostly just, you just have to email Stephen and Rachel Braga, and
Yeah,
then, Elaine or the director,
I think that was the part where they just wanted some of the directors to come to help the Kennedy Plaza. I think that was the game plan, was trying to see who can support the police down at Kennedy Plaza. So I think that's what the whole, that was about, right?
I think that, and I think just get an understanding of like what programs they offer. Yeah, so I think. Maybe it would be helpful just to get those directors to come to next meeting.
Yeah, they know the kids,
Alright.
right?
Yeah.
Kids.
Yes.
and one of them's out today, so whatever happens today anyway, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, we'll make sure that gets done for next meeting. Feedback from outreach to Baltimore and Boston CBI programs, is this you?
Yes, I didn't reach out to them, but I did some deep diving. And so what Baltimore did was they took 8 police officers and created a new unit called the Violence Group. The Group Violence Unit. And they didn't have a whole lot of details, but the idea was that this group would be the ones that are directly dealing with, the certain population that they believe CBI could be most useful in intervening with, and then working with the community-based organizations as their like designee to kind of intervene with those individuals. Again, they didn't have as much detail as I would have liked, because I'm like, that's very broad. What does that exactly mean? I'm like, is this just another violence unit? Is it actually, doing kind of the core tenets of CBI? But I think it would be worth seeing if we can, maybe set up a call with their office, because they have, correlated it with reducing violent crime in their city dramatically. And previously, Baltimore has put in place CBI programs, I want to say like 6 or 7 times, that didn't bring any results. They've actually been the city that have had the hardest time to, implement CBI successfully. Probably next to Chicago and Detroit. But it seems that change in the law enforcement has played a role in their CBI program being successful.
So Lieutenant Potter is basically almost like a community relations, like
Unit, yeah.
unit. That's basically what it's like.
Right.
That's what
Can
it's like.
you explain, I guess, like, for just the general public, what our like, community relations unit looks like?
Yeah, the community engagement building we have is basically, it's me, the director, Tina Shepherd is a program coordinator, and basically we use all of the police department.
There's no specific office.
There's no specific, like, I don't have like a unit. What I do is when we have special events in any of the districts, we will go to the lieutenants and lieutenants will pick who those officers that would go to that event. That's stuff, they felt like if I had my own unit, then the police, the kids in the community, or the community only see just those people in that unit. They wanted the community to see everybody, not just black and brown, not just because all these officers are going to be dealing with these people in our community all the time. So they didn't want to use the same people all the time going to different events. That's what the whole plan was. So what I do is when there's events going on in, say, downtown, we'll go to Lieutenant Carter. If there's events that's happening like Dominican Festival, that's gonna be Lieutenant Tejada. So they're their own like small police chief in their district. That's what they basically are. So I go through them, I say, hey, we got this event going on. They'll pick the people who they think best fits that event that's happening that day. So that's basically how we do it. So we work together on that. We talk a little bit more about it. I set up meetings to go to high rises, to schools, to rec centers, just to get them to know the officers and the lieutenant and the sergeant in their district. So that's basically what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is just constantly building those bridges.
Well, I think Baltimore's was more, like, I think these police were still focused on violent crime. I think the difference is they were just a unit that was specializing in doing those warm handoffs on the individuals who they believe, like some type of program would be supportive for them. So it seemed very much like they worded it as if they removed 8 police officers, but it seemed very much like they just changed the responsibilities and the training for those 8 individuals. And they worked with the main violent crime unit, and then these 8 police officers would be the one who would like call Lisa and be like, hey, I got this kid, he's younger, but his boy's gonna get got, but maybe I can connect you to him and you can take care of him. And but the violent crime unit is gonna handle his boy, right? So it seemed like that's kind of what it was like. But again, I think it would be best if we try to set up like some type of call with them and we can all ask them questions, because I might not even know the questions to ask from a police standpoint, right?
I'm not telling you that, I'm not saying that we should not have one. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a group of people. I still think we can work with lieutenants. I do think at a point, we should probably have a group that maybe Lisa can call on, or maybe the school, like we should have one. I don't know that. I'm just saying, I went to a convention down last year of community engagement for the country. And they all have a unit of officers. Every single one of them have a unit of officers that they use to do a lot of community work. So not like it's not being done, it is being done. It's just that ours is being done, but we just want more officers involved and being part of the community events.
Can I just say something on that point? I mean, I obviously, I want to thread lightly. I'm not a police officer, so I don't know everything that a police officer does. But like, that's always been like one of my not biggest, but one of my complaints to the chief is that we don't have a specific unit, especially like when it comes to like homelessness. Like that's where I see a big lack in how we do law enforcement. Because I work in this field, so I do Pawtucket, North Providence, Central Falls, and they all have like designated officers within their police department that are specific to deal with like encampments and concerns in like homeless community, and like it is like night and day with those interactions. These folks have relationships already. So I'm not saying about the possibility, but that's always been my question to the chief is why do we have a specific unit in Pawtucket? It is the community relations unit that mostly responds to encampment concerns, complaints, calls. So that's something I, have definitely still got. But it's interesting to hear the counter argument on that. But I think there's in an ideal world, I think it's some combination of both is definitely something that we should try to strive for.
What does the violent crime unit look like right now?
Ours?
Yeah.
So we have the Violent Crime Task Force, but we also have CRT now, which is a community response team, a task force. So, I mean, the Violent Crime Task Force is what it's been for years. They target violent crime, and the community response.
How many?
Six
and a sergeant, I think.
I think it's six and a supervisor, and then the community response. That's newer. But they're aimed more, at least originally, at nuisance, at community nuisance.
They're very flexible. They go to whatever the community issues are at the time. Graffiti, they've done everything from graffiti to firearms.
How many are in that unit?
Sorry?
Six in there, sergeant.
Oh, yeah.
No.
6 and a sergeant in the violent crime task force. More gun related crimes.
Yeah.
And then the CRT, I wanna say there's 4 uniform and maybe 4 plain clothes. And they do anything from the graffiti, up to firearms themselves if they have to, depending on what the community concerns are.
I just wanna, say in regards to what you're saying in Baltimore, I feel like, unofficially, we do have that here. But when it comes to CVI, you have to be really, really strategic because of, it's about trust, right? So, for example, now doing the work at the Institute for almost 17 years, I have built trust with certain people on the force because they trust me, I trust them, so we are able to communicate, right? But it's very hard to expect, for instance, we have which were formerly called street workers, outreach workers. It has taken us a long time, almost 25 years to build this partnership with PPD and the Nonviolence Institute. There are still trust issues. I could hire someone that someone on the force feels very strongly, like, I don't trust that person, right? So I'm not gonna give him the information, but Lisa, I trust you, so what I'm going to share with you, you figure out what to do with it, right? And sometimes it's just, hey, Lisa, I know that you know Michael Stevens and he seems to be getting connected or going down the wrong path, maybe you can assist. Or we heard that he may have, has had his hands on a gun. Before we snatch him up, maybe you and your guys can connect with him, right? I once hired someone, and my gut told me not to hire the person, but it was a strong recommendation, and there were people after I hired him on the force that was like, Lisa, be careful with this guy, we don't trust this guy, right? And that could have been very damaging to our relationship with PPD, but because I had the relationships that I had, we just rolled with it, and sure enough, the person proved himself that he was not trustworthy to do the work, right? He is now back in prison, unfortunately, but he was a dangerous person. So it's really about trust building, right? It's very hard to just say this unit at PPD and these folks at the Institute are now gonna be this happy partnership and are gonna work really well together.
Yeah.
So there's information that I get about the streets that I don't share with my staff, only because you have to be careful where it's going, right? Not all information you get is completely 100% correct.
Right.
So I have to really gather information and figure out, is that worth giving it to someone, you know what I mean? Or I break off pieces of it, just because we're talking about people's lives.
Right.
So you have to be very, very careful and strategic. So I love that is wonderful in thought, right? And I'm not saying in Baltimore it's not great and it doesn't work, but it's just really, really about relationship and trust building.
So I want to add to Lisa, yeah, right, that's so dead on. I want to add two things. The work that Baltimore is doing, the same thing she's doing at Nonviolence. Basically, that's what she's doing. What the officers are doing in Baltimore. That's the way I'm looking at it, right? Where what I do in my responsibility is to prevent that.
Yeah.
Ahead of time, before it has to get to that level.
Right.
Our job, that's what my job is. My job is to put officers in a situation where they can make kids feel comfortable or adults feel comfortable and prevent those things from happening. That's what my department, that is what I feel like my unit does.
Right, so about community engagement.
I'm not gonna do the work that she does. That's not my work. That's not Mike Stevens. Mike Stevens' responsibility is to engage in the community in a positive manner. And that's what I try to do, is to prevent those things from happening. That's what I try to do. So, just so you guys understand, right?
Yeah, it's like prevention, intervention, right, and then like enforcement, right?
Right. There you go. There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Exactly it.
Yeah, and I think it's good to take inspiration from other cities, but I think that what we have to analyze what we have that's working and then see, okay, what exactly from their model is what made the difference and what were they doing before? Cause it might not be a copy and paste, but it might be inspiration for like how we can adjust what's already working. So like, if we already have a violent crime unit, right, and you know, maybe it's a change, or maybe it's the growth, or maybe it's the, you know, that to the existing systems that we already have, rather than creating something new, right, that might already look similar to what we have, or maybe it's the building off of what you started, right, and then adding that, you know, a component of the violent crime, the existing violent crime unit to that, right, so there's some type of channel or pathway, you know, between these two units that are working in synchronization, right, to address this issue together, right?
And I was just gonna add that I actually had a meeting with the mayor about a month ago, month and a half ago. And I'm not being facetious, but your name came up, like, right, in a good way. And so I'm not sure if you guys, you may know the gentleman, you may, Robert, and you, Lisa, as well, Michael Alves. Michael Alves. So he has this program, and I guess it's across the state. Have you seen?
He talked to me about it.
Okay, so when I met with the mayor, I mentioned it to him and he said, reach out to Mike Stevens, that's, you know, in your wheelhouse. So I'm going to do that, Mike, and for you mentioning that, Lisa, the two of you guys should probably have a conversation, because that, again, that's not my scene per se. So I'll do that, and then at that point, the next meeting we have, maybe you guys can come back and see if it works. It's supposed to be a free program, it's supposed to, like, it's across the state, it's done like amazing things for major cities. So I'll share that, definitely today, and you guys can circle back and see if there's some, validity there.
What's the name of this program?
I don't recall, let me just look at.
No, and I could. What I was presented with was almost like, the spot, when there's shots and fired and something captures it. It's something like that, you know, would be on a telephone pole or something like
Yeah,
that.
I have the link and everything here for you to,
There's not a lot of money right now, so guys.
Right, so that's what it was for me. I don't think it was free. I think
Well,
it.
I'm gonna make that very clear.
He's
to
saying,
finance
before you
members.
give me a call, so I can fill you in on exactly the way the program works. It's actually free. Thank you. So, again, I'm just gonna pass the information.
Yeah, no,
If that's-
absolutely.
if that's
And
not-
I
that's not-
would absolutely be willing to sit down and try and.
Perfect.
And hear them all.
Yeah.
Perfect. You
Mhm.
know, anything helps, right? Or, you know,
Absolutely.
That's the main point.
Yeah.
One of the main things of this group is there's so much talent and networks and around this table, so I think we should, you know,
absolutely.
at least look into all the different concepts and technology. I sometimes stay away from, but yeah, we can have that discussion.
Yeah, I like the technology, and I like that. I'm a big data guy, so, and I know you guys are as well, because it's really important. I mean, my opinion, data is very, very important.
I mean, I think, you know, to kind of, wrap up my comments on what Baltimore is doing, I think what could be helpful is seeing the org chart of, Providence Police Department, and then maybe like some historical knowledge on like how that's maybe changed and why. Because I really felt like it was good reading about what they're doing, but without knowing more information about our department, I couldn't make any policy judgment, from what I was.
All right, for next meeting.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can say, and I don't know how to say this without it sounding like a little bit funky, but before we look at a Baltimore, I would ask, what has the effect of it been?
Yeah.
And because what we're doing, you might not feel it if you're in the trend. Well, actually, no, Lisa might feel it. What we're doing is having a positive effect as well.
Yeah.
Between the engagement stuff, the CRT stuff, the task force stuff. Like our numbers are down as well.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious as to how that stacks up before we start trying to reinvent the wheel to mimic Baltimore. And
Well, again, I don't.
not
think we
to
need
crap on Baltimore,
Right.
but
I don't think we need
we're
to
probably,
reinvent the wheel.
having a better effect.
Right, I think that the things that led Baltimore to be successful, I would make the assumption that are some of the same things that we've done that have made us also be successful. And I think that, you know, the greater theme of like CBI is just like moving further towards smart policing. Right, like we are getting further and further away from the days that every officer is just a patrol officer, right? And, you know, and so maybe we don't need to create another unit, maybe we need to grow the units, right, that we already have. And, you know, maybe we need to add 2 more officers to that, you know, violent crime unit, right? And then, you know, add some officers to that community unit. So that's where I am right now, but again, I'd have to look at what we have and hear that historical data, how that's changed and how that's made its effect. And then also, you know, be able to take the analysis from what Baltimore's doing, how they're doing it and compare it. But then also, as you said, compare that, the quantitative data, what is the actual impact and how does it pair up to our city's work? And with those 2 things, you know, kind of taking an apples to apples comparison, then we can make that analysis and even say if theirs is even better than what we're doing, right?
And we just have to be prepared. In an organization, there's people who is talented in certain things, right?
Right.
So like Alex Diaz, I use Alex Diaz, he's unbelievable in the community. He grew up in the community, so he knows the community, right? Some people. Yeah, he's Jose Guest champs, like they're unbelievable. They grew up in the community. Some officers are just great at doing violent crimes, you know, so our responsibility is to put the people who can blossom in our department to do well, right? And pick the right people, and that's why the people in the CRT unit, they were handpicked because they are good at what they do.
Right.
And that's just something I think that's because everybody on the police force can't be community, can't work in the community. They're not, it just can't happen. A lot of them can't do it, right? It's just what it is, and we just have to pick the talented people in those divisions.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you know, you look at policy and data and all that other stuff, and it doesn't show the character behind it.
Right.
Right, so you know, and that's why I'm like, speaking to these people, once we kind of do our analysis and even agree that this is something that, you know, we can learn from. Speaking to them personally and hearing that kind of, well, we actually have this individual is the reason why that's been successful, you know, is important context as well. Thank you for that, thanks. So yeah, that concludes my.
Anyone else have anything on that?
No, Robert brought it up.
Did you say you were going to Baltimore, Robert?
Actually, I did. It was about a party. It wasn't about CBI.
Did it make it to the Baltimore police station?
Thank God. They get stopped or anything.
Yeah. Just ain't gonna hear about it.
Fair enough. Moving on, defining a clear unified message for funding requests to private sector and state departments. I'd say we're probably about how much longer?
I mean, I think once we have PJ's survey information, and once we, have that asset map, maybe we can bug the council and the city planning department to get that asset map. Because once we have that asset map, then we can say, okay, this is where the gaps are. And then we can put together, we can say, okay, if this program is covering this many people and it costs this much, how much money does Lisa need to cover this neighborhood? Or to add on to this, right? And then we can have a clear ask that's connected to what is missing. And then we can, you know, figure out what's the best avenue to make those requests.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just since like, it is a lighter agenda and we have some time, I think we spend like 5-10 minutes just going around the table and everyone just kind of lists like what they think or feel are some gaps right now. I think just to have some on paper to get the ball rolling, before next year. So I'll just start this side if anyone wants to share, you know, just from your experience, from your position perspective, like what are some major gaps that you see as the problems when it comes to either deterring violence or kids not having things to do, anything really that might fall under community violence intervention.
When I think about that, I think that kids in the city of Providence have a lot of opportunities. That's just one thing I gotta tell you. I mean, it's up to them to choose what they want to do. So that's the first thing. I think what we miss, and this is something I found out like even more and more, is the senior citizens. And we talk so much about, youth, and we forget about the senior citizens who are being elderly abused and things happen to them in their high rises. One of the things I think that we're missing. I think we put a lot of energy and effort into our youth, and we should. And that's one thing you talk about, the book that we should guide, a parent guidebook for all of the programming that's going on in the city of Providence. That's one thing I talked about last meeting. But I think there's a lot of opportunities. I just think that we just need to work with, PBSD to be able to, them to be able to tell those kids opportunities in their neighborhoods. There's so many things going on, and I think that the disconnect between PBSD, recreation department, community centers, boys and girls club, there's a disconnect there. We need to bring that connection together there to be able to give the parents options for those kids to have more, more things to do in the city. That's my opinion.
And I put a note on that, I think there has been, a little bit improvement in the relationship. I also sit on the rec board. And man, some of those meetings are just extremely, frustrating, 'cause we go to rec centers. And there's a good amount of rec centers that are attached to the schools. And up to, really this year, the rec board or the rec department had no idea, and there's no coordination of the school, so like dismissal times were off, and even just maintenance and security. But I think finally, after this, settlement agreement, I think that was like at the base of a lot of the disagreements have been settled. I think we are hopefully moving in the right direction. If those relationships, like you're mentioning, Michael, are at least working together, our kids really pay the price for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, especially when the school board can help out with too.
Yeah. I'm glad about the school board. I'm the biggest fan, you said that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who are the gaps?
yeah, we're just thinking, I guess, from like your perspective, like what, we're just taking like 5-10 minutes, like what are some of your perspectives on like what is, not happening or is needed more?
DCYF.
CBI.
You said?
DCYF.
Can you elaborate a little bit on like what?
They should be involved in everything that we're talking about right now. Everything that we're talking about goes back to the home. We can do miracles, and then if we send the kid home and that's all messed up, then we wasted our time. Not to sound.
No, it's just.
No, it's not.
To be as honest as possible.
Yeah, no, like, all the girls here, I grew up, I come home and my dad would be like, you got a black eye, you better go black his eye, or, you know what I mean? And so it's like, until we can't address that, right? You can't address the issue of violence completely, right? Cause like, I might be scared of a kid at school, but I'm more scared of dad.
And it has everything to do with what we're talking about with Kennedy Plaza as well. A lot of those kids, we're dealing with one of the call that I'm dealing with now is a kid who's been missing for several days. And we don't even know.
Yeah, I got an email
where
that,
DCYF's involvement is right now with that.
I got an email that a mom drove her daughter or son to chase down another kid after school.
I can see that a lot.
Yeah.
Don't get me started, please.
Robert, you have anything? You wanna add?
Yeah, I think the DCYF thing is on point, so I'd like to add the Rhode Island Training School to that. One of the things that I'd like to see, and I heard Mike when he said there's a lot of things in the city for the kids to do. So if we're targeting a violent population of under 18, right, 14 and whatever it is, I'd like to see a more comprehensive way to direct, for lack of a better term, drag them into some type of workforce development. Whether it's technology, whether it's the trades, something that's a pathway to a career.
Taking my shine.
Mine too.
But
this spot on.
It could
It's
be
spot on.
residential building.
Yeah, just follow.
And at the table, we have enough resources to identify those career clusters where the leaders are. So how do we capture the attention and get these kids motivated that are out here, that are the violent ones, to say, okay, this is an option, and we can develop a plan for you to earn while you're involved in this. And Lisa knows if you can capture the leaders, everybody else is a follower and you'll follow. So if we identify some of the leaders in some of the pockets, or some of the folks that may not be a verbal leader or outright leader, just this workforce development, whether it's in the healthcare and technology, all of the career clusters. I mean, we've got Brown University, we've got the colleges and universities, we've got the hospitals, we've got us at the table. There's some way, because we're losing these kids. And even if they walk away from the violent thing, where are they gonna go? What are they gonna do with the rest of their lives?
Right.
Okay, we can say, okay, listen, we can get you off the street, you're not gonna do this violent stuff anymore, okay, I'm all in.
So this,
Now what do I do?
this is the third time that Rob, you brought that up. So
Yeah,
my feeling, I think at our next meeting, we should try to see if we can get some trained people in here to see what they can do to help us to be able to guide those kids that way. That's what I think. Like, that's the third time you brought that up.
I think, Michael, that's really good, but where I see it, you know, a big need for this is like some type of like referral system.
Yeah.
What have we been across the country in terms of?
For this particular issue, not a whole lot. There's a ton of other referral systems for homeless, for employment, but not necessarily.
Like, that's what, like, just to put a sample out there, like, I work in homelessness, and we have the coordinated entry system, so we meet someone outside, we do an assessment, and it gets them generated into this program, and, you know, depending on their circumstances, they might be eligible for certain, like, vouchers or different shelter opportunities, so like, in an ideal world, maybe not necessarily have to recreate a whole system like this, but where it'd be universal for people that are dealing with some of the folks in this population to be able to refer them directly to different workforce training opportunities. So I think that's something we should try to.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, DLT has stuff going on, and they have youth, they had, well.
Real skills for you. we
All
have
kind, you know, you got, yeah,
we
so,
got 61 real
Right.
jobs partners, over $11 million in job training, funding $6 million in WIOA, 3-4 million in youth WIOA. Like there's over $30 million. If you took proportion to what Rhode Island spent for employment and training and took it to California, it would be 500 billion. Right, it's like per capita, we have some of the most money at the state level per
Right.
capita in the entire country.
so how I kind of see this in a nutshell is, okay, Lisa can capture and knows where these kids are, and I'm throwing it right. Thinking out loud, so, okay, so we take the folks from DLT who are in these spaces that target youth populations for job workforce development, for whatever. And we take them and we put them as recruiters into your building,
Yeah,
and you get them there.
yeah, like a nonviolence.
You get them there.
Intervention, I mean.
My agency gets our kids, the adults we work with, we go to them and we say, where are your kids that are in the street doing this? We get them there. That's how we get this done. We carve out the space. We have the recruiters come in from DLT that have the money and can set it up and apply and do the registration. And then we have the workforce development, your company come in and say, I'll take 4 kids. We have
I
Mike,
can do
we have Mark Lopes come in and say, I'll take a dozen kids. I'll mentor, because he has a mentoring program. We'll take Mike out. There's enough of us professionals and entrepreneurs around the city and around the state that we can pull in to the city and say, okay, we're developing this as a program. A comprehensive program. And once everybody knows, once it's proven that it works, then the funding, God willing, will start to
I
pour.
can tell you,
This can work.
I could bring all the recruiters, long as y'all can bring the people.
We'll bring the kids, we'll get the kids.
Begging.
You can't give the money
employees,
away.
for people
I
to
know.
train. And we have the Department of Labor training those job fairs, and guess how many people show up?
I know.
3.
I
because the
know.
Government.
You can't be, yeah.
We're not connected with the
Right.
community enough.
And we are, so it's time that we came to the table and said, okay. Here's the funding.
So
You don't even have to look for it.
So we're talking about like logistically, something to refer them, is that what you was talking about earlier, like
No,
the system for referring them?
Yeah, I mean, I was bringing up a system, but I mean, even something where, you know, an event once every couple of months, but that, you know, sometimes even just starting in that aspect.
I mean, if we had like a
I'm sorry,
pool of
Chair.
resources, like Robert's talking about, Rhode Island Mentor RI, they have their own little system for, I'm sure we can just repurpose something like that, and as opposed to putting it to a mentor, we can put it to the resources. This, here's the kid, here's the resource, just.
I mean, yeah, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, what I'm getting ready to say is, okay, so we got kids out here that obviously have an affinity for guns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For all the wrong reasons. So why don't we figure out a way to do a workforce development program around weapons, around the proper use and I don't know, I'm just trying to think outside the box, like, you don't have to run around it, but yeah, I mean, I'm just, get the gun manufacturers to pay for it. No, listen, I'm throwing stuff to see what's that, you know, this
You're throwing
probably.
bullets, Robert.
I know, it's probably not a great idea the way it's coming out, but.
I think he's onto something though.
Yo, you like, I mean.
Education.
Yeah, like.
Whether it's gun safety or.
Yeah, like.
Here's what's possible.
I don't know, I mean.
Just general education around, you
Here's
know.
what's possible with DOT dollars. Getting existing programs to show up to a job fair looking for employees. Creating a new program is gonna be harder than hell.
No,
because, you know,
I'm sorry,
we
I don't mean to
lost-
interrupt.
We went from 46 million to 11 million because we had all those ARPA dollars. And all those organizations are now begging for more money when we don't have it, so.
Well, no, I'm not asking to develop a new program, you have the programs, you just. Can't do the outreach to get the people in, so.
Well, tell the
The
kids that
kids.
Electric Boat is making the biggest weapons in the world. They're making submarines with nukes.
Right, and, you know, I'm just scared, like, the tree, you take. Sorry.
I don't know if you guys will not contribute.
No. Yeah, maybe I was a little off the beaten path around that one, but no, you understand, we gotta do something with our kids that are in the street, that have all this energy and their potential is so great, and they have no idea who they are, their identity is a mess, on a lot of occasions, for all the reasons we know, and so, you know, I just think that's the direction. If you want my piece of, that's where we need to go.
Just one question. Tell me who can stop guns on the street, or stop gun violence, tell me who can do it.
The government,
Hmm.
they're the ones that allow
It's
the gun to
us
come in.
as community members,
Right,
and us as
okay.
parents to stop that.
Right,
That's who stops it.
right.
We need to get the community people all together, and I keep saying it every time, get the community people together, so I get the community people together, and that's where we can work on help stopping violence, gun violence, I'm just being honest. The kids will listen to a lot of people, they really will. We just have to give them a voice and an opportunity to be able to tell us what is wrong with them. And we don't do it. We tell them.
I think Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa get it, yeah.
If I could just chime in really quick, so the reason why I agree with Robert, somewhat is that. And then growing up in Boston, Roxbury, living in that, environment, growing up in that environment, a lot of times. When kids pull out a gun, they use a gun, they really don't even know what they're doing. When they take someone's life, they really don't even know. Like what they've actually done. And Lisa, you could probably speak to this. So when they age out, now they're in prison, or some of them don't get caught, they age out, they're like, oh my God, what did I do? I actually took someone's life. Right, and it's never coming back from that. So, you know, you have all these things, oh, I'm tough on this and that, but then when they really sit down and think about it, and they grow up out of it, they really see how terrible this was. So I think, and then maybe what you were saying, Miguel, is the gun safety factor, right? So you do the gun safety factor, and then you add that piece. And so if I could just add this one last thing, so when I was the president of 300 Men, I was trying to work with, what is her name? She owns the, funeral home on Broad Street. Christine Cardoza. And what we were trying to do is, again, it goes back to funding, and I was gonna say to you, Corey, that trickle down, you have all these millions of dollars you're speaking of, but is it really trickling down to someone like Lisa? And when I came in, I whispered in her ear and I said, do you feel like you're getting the right amount of funding from the city and the state? And we had that conversation, correct, Lisa? So, right, exactly. So that's a problem. But what we were gonna do is we were gonna bring the kids into the funeral home and show them the whole process of what actually death looks like, because these kids do not understand it. And when I was in there and she was like, oh, Alan, give me a second, I just have to go and deal with one of my clients, right? And I'm like, what? So I'm okay. I walk in the room with her and I see all the utensils out that they use for embalming and all of that stuff, right? Literally, she was like, after about 5 minutes, she said, Alan, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I've seen, listen, I was flustered. She gave me a bottle of water because my mind was just racing. So I said, if that affects me in this manner, imagine what it does for kids. So again, I think it goes back to kids really don't realize death. They really don't understand death. And I think that not all, because as you know, being law enforcement, you're gonna lose. Some kids you're just gonna lose them, right? But most kids, I think if they're exposed to that in the proper way, and I don't know specifically, I can't give you all the notes, but so that's why I agree with Robert somewhat in that regard.
Cause I mean, I would push back that, I mean, at the end of the day, like kids, are just products of their environment. I mean, we could do, everything at the end of the day as a community, but if a kid, feels threatened, feels unsafe, I mean, they're the only ones, I mean. At the end of the day, like, the only person that's gonna stop a gun from, firing is the person holding the gun. But as a community, as city officials, there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent or even, when a kid has a gun, to think and it's not, wait, maybe let me go do this other path that is offered in my way.
I mean, let's be clear, the work that the Nonviolence Institute does with street outreach workers is nationally recognized for directly intervening in gun violence incidents. Right, so like, having street outreach workers is literally the antidote to stopping a gun incident from happening. What happens after that is where employment, mentorship, and all those other components are important. But like, if we want to intervene in a gun, if someone is angry and they have a gun and they want to go get someone, the only person that's stopping that person is a street outreach worker calling them who has a relationship and who is saying, hey, calm down, let me talk to you. I know you I don't care, I just don't want you to shoot this person, right? But connecting those people to employment in a job fair, I think is a very feasible thing that we could do like that. As soon as you can get the people, we can get the employers, that will sit down. Now, do we have to work with employers to get them to be open to taking people who might have a criminal record, to get them to change their work environment? Yes, and that's work that DOT and even with, Mike Hogan that we've been working on to work with employers, exposing them. What we do is we'll bring in like 1 or 2 and have that employer adopt. What the employers usually find is they go, wait, I was hiring a bunch of kids off the streets that were leaving in 2 weeks, right? This guy, I hired him, he's the hardest working person. He didn't talk to nobody, he didn't, he might look a little rough when he walks in, but that's also because they didn't create an environment that was welcoming for that individual. But, we have employers that are now saying, please give me a justice involved individual because the ones you gave me, they did so well. And part of the reason they did so well is because most of the jobs and real jobs are $35 an hour and up, right? So this person got more money than they ever had in their life, right? And then they said, I don't want to lose this, so I'm going to do everything I can to keep this because this is more money than I ever had in my life, right?
Just for the record,
Lisa?
DLT, Lisa and her agency should never have to worry about money,
Exactly.
Yeah.
ever. What we're looking at, while this committee was developed, they should never have to worry about it.
Right.
Never.
So, thank you. I have a lot to say, right, because there are those that they are so deep in now that there is not going to be any job that is going to change the trajectory that they're on. They're not getting rid of their guns. Some of our youth are actually given guns by family members including a father, because they know that if their son does not have a gun, that he may potentially lose his life. I've seen it happen. I was part of a conversation, and so there are some that we know that the only thing that is going to change that trajectory is relocation. Actually moving that entire family, mom, children to another state.
Yes.
I don't even say in another place in Rhode Island, because Rhode Island is so small that they're gonna find them, right? So a couple of things. We have to get to our younger children, right? We started off in high school, then we started saying we gotta get to the middle school, and honestly, now we have to get to the elementary school before they get on this trajectory, right? And there's so many layers of it. There's substance abuse concerns, there's mental health concerns. Our children now have experienced so much loss in the community, friends, family members, fathers. And we're doing our best, right, with mental health. But we have youth that will come to our programs, our seed program, and they share their stories, and, you know, they say, oh, I lost 8 people in my family. Oh, I lost, you know, oh, how are we helping this person, right? It's now normalized to lose a loved one to gun violence, right? So we know there's that set of youth that are already on this trajectory, right? It's now their culture. They hear it in the music, they see it on social media all day, all night, because we know they can't get rid of their phones. And we also have those that are living in the homes that the families are supporting it. Please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every youth that is involved with the streets has a bad family or someone pushing them to it, because we have great parents and family members that also don't know how their children got involved, right? But we do know that some are already too far gone, and I know that sounds harsh, too far gone, but what I'm saying is, it's not going to be a job. We've helped many young people get jobs, and they lost their lives by still being in the environment, right? And it's because we now have this culture that we've seen it for how many years, south side, east side, right? And now we have all the branches off of each side, that we now have youth that are just still carrying over the beef. I don't like you because
You're from that.
it's almost your
town.
grandfather now.
Right.
Your grandfather killed my uncle, right? And this is just continuing on and continuing on. And so I know I'm saying a lot, but there are so many issues that our community is facing. The mental health is huge, right? Because now I see this, being at the age that I'm at now, there are some young people, mothers and fathers, that I recall them being born into a single family home, or the mother became addicted to crack cocaine and the grandmother raised that child, and then now the grandmother is gone, or the grandmother's not able to do anything anymore. Now you have this young person that has no foundation, right? And the other thing is our youth using substances themselves.
Yeah.
I know 11-year-olds that are smoking weed. 12, 13, 14, smoking weed like it's candy, right? So we have that to add. And I know I'm not coming up with answers, but what I'm just trying to say is that there are so many layers. Some of these ideas are absolutely great, and they're gonna help a portion of these youths, but we need to figure out so many other paths for those that we're not gonna change this trajectory unless we do something extreme.
Yeah.
And with the housing crisis, the issues that are happening with the homelessness population, and, you know, it's very hard to say, okay, we can move a family. We've also moved families. The Nonviolence Institute has relocated some to different states, but some here locally. And what happens? We have one family at the house, she was on Section 8, the house kept getting shot up, she had maybe like 6 kids, and it went right down from the oldest to the youngest. House getting shot, house getting shot, house getting shot. We moved her to another side of town. What happened within 9 months? The house getting shot, the house getting shot, the house getting shot. What do we do, right? And then there've been some, you know, that you relocate them and they do come back, but we do also have some that have changed their whole lives around. But the scary thing is, Alan, you may have made the decisions to change your life, but because once upon a time you was a shooter and you carried a gun and you did this, you're never going to be safe because those people that knew you to be the shooter, their retaliation can come 10, 15, 20 years from now. Right? We see that, right? We see it all the time when you figure out why did this happen? This happened because he shot someone 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, right? So I know, again, I think we do have a lot of resources for the youth, but I think there's many of us that are focusing on those that we feel are involved, high school, right? We really have to get the younger children involved in things before they get to the middle school and start to branch off and get involved because of safety concerns. My own grandson, someone rode up on him, he's half Cambodian. He looks Cambodian and they ran up on him and asked him, who does he rep?
Right.
And, you know, he had a Cambodian gold chain on. I always say, why do you buy him such expensive gifts? But it's that his father's side of the family bought him like $2,000 and they wanted his chain. And, you know, thankfully he got away unharmed. But now he's asking me questions. Nani, what does that mean? Who do I rep? Right? And I'm starting to see his little energy and his attitude kind of shifting. And I'm like, he might feel like he has to rep something now.
Right.
And he's not sharing with me now because I'm like, I came at him and I'm drilling him, right? But now I see this little swag or this little energy and I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's a defense mechanism.
It's a
Yeah,
defense
so-
mechanism. Now he might have to portray that he's hard or that he's repping someone or something, and that makes him a target.
And the key thing is he's not gonna share it with you.
I know,
You need someone else to
Right.
intervene from to share it with,
Right.
because he's not gonna share with you.
right. But there are so many things, and one of the other issues that we see a lot is, you know, poverty is real, and we see what's happening in our community, but we have young people with real food insecurities. We have youth that come to our program and they're really like, do you have something to eat? Right? And they know us now from our seed program, right? Like we give them snacks. Miss Wanda always makes sure she has, you know, snacks available for them. Literally they'll walk by and they'll, you know, they're not in seed anymore. They'll walk by and come into the lobby and say, is there any snacks? You guys got any snacks left? You know, and it's just like, that's heartbreaking. Kids are hungry. One young person told me how he knew what time to sneak into Roger Williams School to go into the staff's, break room and take staff lunches. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have nothing to eat and he would bring it to his sisters and brothers. You know, so there's so many things that we are talking about here, and I'm not saying anything is wrong, right? But it's multi-layered and we have to figure out,
Where we start.
right,
You can't fix everything.
we
No.
can't fix
So we
everything.
gotta pick something that we could be successful with, that we know that we can be successful with, and then move to the next level.
I guess so, because from my lens, I'm just getting really nervous because in the 17 years doing the work, I've seen younger children get involved. You know, just now that hospital response that I got up to call, it's an 11-year-old boy that got jumped already for the 3rd time. Right? So what do we think is gonna happen to that 11-year-old boy?
Yeah.
Right? So I see it younger and younger. We're at Hasbro more often for young people being stabbed. I mean, we're talking about 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. As I said to Alan, right, I didn't say that today, that you said to me the other day, we were talking about other stabbings that are happening in our community, and he's like, oh yeah, every one of my friends I know carries a blade, like that's, you have to. And we're seeing an uptick in stabbings. We see stabbings all the time. So. Again, I know I didn't give a resolution, but what I'm saying is we have to.
You gave a reality check.
Relocation, right?
Is there
We're gonna
any-
work with
Is
the
there
highest
any-
need.
Is there any, programs that you're aware of that help with relocation?
No,
No.
No, so, you know, when we had the VOCA funding, which we all know,
Yeah.
well, I believe everyone knows that VOCA, there's a cut, nationwide, but to our city, I mean, our state. VOCA allowed us to use funding for relocation or, emergency hotel stays because, you know, someone's house gets shot up, you gotta come up with a plan. All right, let's put you in a hotel till we figure out what the next step is, right? Because housing's a hard issue. But you know, there's been times, Amos,
As a kid, it's like, what the heck? What is
What
this?
are we doing in
What's
Iowa?
up? You know, and every day my dad would lock himself in the room because he was like, if I don't want to run into the wrong person and get in an argument and then do something I regret. So I call it, he created his own prison, right? Once he got out of prison, he knew he didn't want to go back. So he just locked himself, moved to Iowa, locked himself in the room and just isolated himself from society. You know, in order to keep himself out of trouble.
I wanna add something else, right? DCYF, you're absolutely right. But once again, when we talk about relationships and trust, our community's afraid of DCYF. And I know DCYF has come a long way. I've seen it, I've watched it, right? But our community is still very, very fearful when the DCYF calls or comes knocking on the door. My kids are gonna get removed, you know, something, you know, whatever is gonna happen. I really appreciate that DCYF is really looking at the family as a whole now, right? And trying to put supports in place. But I think we have to do that as a community, even like we talk about, you said the Ritz, right? These systems are in place that sometimes they're more hurtful than helpful.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out how to make sure that our children, whether they're in families, whether they're getting involved with DCYF or they're going to the Ritz, that there are true wraparound services so that when they do become involved, we're looking at the whole picture, right? It's not oh, mom's drinking every night, okay, well, you're getting removed, right, what are we doing to help mom, right? You know, many times we harm our children more by removing them from their homes and what they know, so. We have to look at our systems and we have to figure out how to support, a family as a whole. Again, I'm getting old enough to, there's actual families that I know that I watched generations now, and I'm like, well, that happened because, dad died, and then, you know, she was addicted to heroin, and she gave her kids to her cousin, and the cousin, you know, there's just like so many things now, and it's understanding why now little Joey is the shooter and on the south side.
Right.
You know, and he's hustling and selling crack or whatever it is that he's doing,
Didn't have a chance.
yeah.
No, thank you guys for this, very, balanced and thoughtful conversation, just to keep it moving. Before we move on to, public comment, was there something that you wanted to?
We gotta talk about.
I know, there's a lot, huh?
I honestly don't wanna follow that. But I'll,
Sorry.
no, I don't wanna make it, I'm learning a lot sitting here, like, I think, a police officer progresses throughout his career, you start out 5 to 10 years, you're out there just trying to prevent crime, and then you, as you age, you progress through the ranks especially, you start seeing the higher issues that cause some of the problems we deal with, and I think educating our officers that those problems we just talked about, it's important. But that's a side note. So downtown, I took over recently, and just to, especially the school dismissals down there. As soon as I checked in, right, I got with, Director Stevens, and we made points of contact at each, charter school down here. And it's including, Angel, Newman at 220, because of the after-school programs. So I gave them my information, met with them in person, Charette, Corey Brown, Tammy Frone at Ryan and they now have my number, right? And as the weather gets nicer, they'll be well spun in with the police down here. And at any time they can call me with any concerns they have, so we can get ahead of anything that might be an issue down there. Also with that, I think exposing the bike and foot and the officers that are down there all the time to the students, and exposing the students to the police officers. The first time they're seeing them isn't down here in Kennedy Plaza. May, we're going to a lunch at the Rhine, and last March 13th, me and the foot guys down here went to a cultural event, a family fest on Broad Street for the Charette School. So just trying to do things like that, just continuously reaching out and being like, everything all right. That's my goal, to be accessible and to have those open lines of communication. And that goes with everybody down here, Matheson Street Church, as far as the unhoused population. I have a very good rapport with Kevin Simon down there. He called me today about something, so I think he's educating me, and I'm also educating him as far as the police response. So we're gonna continue with that model with the schools. Hopefully, we don't have any issues down there, because they alleviated some of the bus routes and stuff like that, but we'll continuously adjust to whatever we run into. And again, I think the biggest thing is getting back to that community. I came up through community policing and foot posts with Dean Esserman and Tenny Gross. And like, if we can get back to that, the numbers, and like have that officer just not be a uniform driving around and be like a face. I think hopefully that trends us back in the right direction. Not that we're doing the wrong thing, but I mean, I think we're doing pretty well, but we could always do better. But again, it was a heavy conversation. I wrote a lot of notes down. But if there's any questions as far as from me being the downtown lieutenant, I'm more than willing to answer them.
I mean, I think the great thing is the fact that the story that Lisa tells us and officers hear it, they're understanding what they're dealing with every day out there, right? Especially when it comes to youth. And I think that we gotta tell that story more. They gotta hear it more. And I think the more that they hear it, I know that Youth Service Bureau, and I know you guys hear it all the time, but they got all the officers need to hear what's going on out there in the community and understand what they're dealing with. You know, I think that's important. I think that's what's so good about you being down here and meeting with their schools, is because you're listening and you're taking notes and you're trying to think about ways or thinking about ways to be able to try to handle it without have to putting handcuffs on kids.
And I also think like a good point was brought up, like, at what age do you start talking about this stuff? Like, I have a 9, an 11, and a 13, 15-year-old. And when I talk to them about the future, they don't talk about like carrying a knife and stuff.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
Right.
They talk about, oh, I wanna be a police officer, I wanna do this job. So getting that mindset at the youngest ages, that'll hopefully steer them, keep them in that right direction.
You know, what's weird, what made me differ from a lot of people in my family is that I talked a lot. And so the adults in my family would say, he's gonna be a lawyer. The way he talked, right? But it seriously was like
Politician close by.
you grow up in the mold that people set for
It's
you,
a
right?
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, like my middle brother, they were like, oh, he's gonna be a troublemaker, he's gonna be in trouble, he's gonna be an issue, and sure enough, that's what happened, right? My older brother was like, oh, he's the perfect child, he's the golden child, and he was, right, he still is, right? So it's like, we tell kids what they're gonna be and then they become it. Right, and like part of it is also, we gotta change the narrative, and say, no, this kid, well, he's defiant, maybe he's gonna be a protester, maybe he's gonna be a system changer, right? Not he's gonna be a troublemaker, right?
One other thing I want to mention too, you guys mentioned it, coming down there and actually, I mean, I'm sure you guys have all been down there, but seeing a dismissal or meeting the bike or foot cops. I'll leave my number here, like, anytime we want to set that up, we can make that happen.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when all the kids are engaging or congregating there, do you see, like, are you able to identify the agitators per se?
That's
Like,
one of the things when we went to these schools, a lot of the principals and the teachers were worried that it's not their kids in the fights, but their kids are like the unintended consequences that we're running up trying to break the fight up, you know, we make mistakes sometimes too, you know, yes, yes and no, usually you can, just with that presence, you feel that, that aura down there of what's about to take place, but that's also why it'll be important to get some staff to come down.
That's what we
Because they know their students
Right.
better than we're ever gonna know.
That was one thing we talked about at the school, was like, if we had someone to say, no, I got him, that's one of my kids at Noel, or that's one of my kids at the Chevette. That's what they want to happen. They don't know those kids. There's 1,000 kids down there. They're hoping that they have someone from the schools to be able to say, I'll get him out of there. I'll get him off. So I'll take him. That's what they're trying to get. And I said this last meeting. If they have to handle it, it's the last resort.
Right.
That's why I always say this to everyone all the time. When they're called, you can't think that they're gonna be
Lisa.
yeah, right? You can't just know that they have to, they're the last resort, so we have to be able to get more of our teachers and more of our community members down there to be able to help the situation. That's the way I believe.
We got some good communications, at least 3 out of the 4 schools that I have right now.
And that's the other thing too, right? We know that police have a job as well, right? And I'm gonna be honest, we do have some dangerous kids in our community,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, I know that people right away say like, oh, he's a kid. We see some really tough kids do some really harsh things to people, and it's hard. How do we balance that, right? Like,
You put yourself in that situation, like, I understand he's a kid, but if he's hurt my mom because he's able to shoot at someone, I don't think about being a kid anymore. He's an adult if he wants to take somebody's life.
I would say, I mean, something that I really have really come to understand, appreciate while serving on the council is like, multiple things can be true at once.
Yeah.
You know, he can be a very dangerous, figure to the community, and it can also be, he's just responding to all this trauma that he has lived through his 14 years of life. So I mean, those two things can be true, and as a community, we have to, protect the overall community, but there's certain methods of being
Absolutely.
empathetic
Yeah.
lens when dealing with this interaction.
and that's just with clarity, that's what I'm trying to say is that that's why it's important, we need to the layers of it, right? Because before it gets to that point that this person is very dangerous, right? It's very hard to go backwards. If he kills someone, You know, we have a lot of young people in prison now doing very large numbers because they've taken someone's life, right? We know that those people wish they made a different choice. You know what I mean? So it's very hard to go backwards after these things occur.
And you
Just
I just wanted to go to what he said, the key piece you understand is that we may personally haven't dealt with someone being killed by gun violence, right? So it's easy for us to say, hey, we still gotta work with this kid, we gotta do this, right? And till you get affected by it, you're not gonna feel that way. And you gotta think about all these people that lost their kids and lost their parents from gun violence. They're not feeling the way that we feel, because we didn't deal with that. They're dealing with hatred, they're angry, and that's something that we have to understand. So for us not to let that happen, we gotta try to do some intervention to try to help those kids.
I was at court this morning with a gentleman that the person that was found guilty for taking his son's life, I think back in 2012. They are overturning the case, so he may walk soon. He's actually out on home confinement, and I was with the dad today. And that's how he feels, like my son's life wasn't worth, you know what I mean? That's how he feels, you know, so I do see both sides of the coin often. It's just very difficult to be able to balance that.
One other thing, I don't know if it makes any sense, but captivated audience, right, is what you need to get some of these programs that you were talking about out there. Like, you have a captivated audience down there, like, what's wrong with setting up a table, like, some of these agencies that wanna hire people, setting up a table down there, if you get 1 or 2 takers, like, you have the job fairs, only 3 people show up.
Yeah.
You could have a job fair every day down here, Monday through Friday,
Right.
if you really, you know.
Yeah.
True. It's actually a good idea.
That's true. I don't know how business service reps will.
I'll talk to Rip, I'll swear. They're gonna do proposals.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they wanna add? I know we kinda jumped around on the agenda. I appreciate everyone's flexibility.
Really
I do
quickly,
wanna leave a few minutes for public comment.
yeah, I just want to really quickly, some of the stuff we talked on about, working with the whole family, fits under the bucket of family functional therapy. So, family functional therapy is used in violence reduction work, and it's hard to get the family to agree to it. But if we can get some funding for that, I think that's a huge gap.
Hives does offer FFT and children's family services offer FFT as well.
I mean, if it's straight family clinical therapy, insurance providers pay for that. So if the family has insurance,
Right.
the insurance will pay for it. Just gotta get them to buy into it.
How many families though, and
And I wonder about being court ordered, right, for young person, if it's in
Yeah.
trouble, it could be.
how many?
It may, in some cases it may, I
Maybe
don't know.
we need to get along.
All right, does anyone from the public wanna share anything?
Of course.
Wisdom.
I have 2 takeaways today. It was astonishing, you guys were amazing today. My first takeaway is that the best practices opened up here in this room today. I heard best practices about what to do for an at-risk child that may be as young as elementary school, to help guide that kid through school and have all of the kinds of supports that they need to avoid becoming an offender. And those best practices, I hope were captured, was it recorded today?
Yep.
Yay! Because these best practices should be written down, and some sad person who probably works for the council will probably have to be a person who gets to make up that list. But that's an important component, I think, of the work of the task force, is to start to assemble these best practice ideas. Some of them will later be discarded and some of them will be adopted, but to have a list to work from and say, what's the best practice for the child? And to start to approach that is extremely important for everybody in the room and for those of us who work in the gun violence prevention advocacy groups. The second thing that I was hearing today is the absence of university scholarship around CBI. That, Corey's made some attempts, to find out about the CBI programs that are succeeding in other cities. We find out the police program, I didn't hear about the community program, I heard about the police, but I didn't hear about a hand-in-hand situation. I think that sometimes when Boston has done the work of starting a CBI, it may have started from law enforcement, but there usually is a companion university study that goes on to find out the effectiveness of that work.
Institute Brown University.
Say that again?
Brown University Watson's Institute, we
Okay.
have a professor who's done a lot of work.
We
on that.
use them now.
Um,
We use them now for our adult population
Watson
that are
Institute.
justice involved. I don't know if it's Watson, but Brown is contracted with our agency to do the data research. I mean, even to the point where after 6 months of being involved with us in our program, they come in and they do a post interview with that particular client. Anyway, they're doing the research component data collection for us. So I don't know if that's where you were going.
Getting at that, I think that the university's academic study of how effective the CBI program is something that would help inform the committee's work. And how you do that outreach, whether it's to a particular institution that you know of locally. I know that Mayor Smiley is a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Their parent organization is the same one of New York as Mom Strand Action that Gina and I belong to. They have a CBI research on them. And they should be helping you guys right now. So if, you know.
What's that org?
Every town for community.
Mayor Smiley is a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Their parent organization is everytown.org. Our parent organization is everytown.org. And Nonviolence Institute is a community partner of everytown.org. You guys have every reason to ask them in their research on to tell you what university research has been conducted on CBI and provide you with that information.
Actually, we tomorrow.
Go. Don't work, Bert. And I think you're in the right direction, that it's always been a good conversation here, agency to agency. The part that excited me the most today was the idea that one entity that's working with at-risk kids and a non-profit group that's working with at-risk kids are talking to each other about a potential fire. Corey, how exciting would it be if a teacher was sitting in an interview situation to become a teacher for PPSD, and there was somebody in the room evaluating whether or not they were going to be effective with at-risk kids? Somebody who knows what they're doing. Wouldn't that be exciting? That level of collaboration that was being investigated today and talked about, that was most exciting. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Val.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Ditto, right?
That's it. I will entertain, definitely want to thank you guys all very much. Thank you, Lieutenant, for joining us. You're welcome to stop by any meeting. We'll figure out next meeting. I'm gonna play lunchtime or dinner time for me. I have lunch. I'm starving.
Me too.
We'll figure out, when the next meeting will be, in between. I'll have, either Isabel or Doug reach out. Yeah, that being said, thank you guys all very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, hopefully.
Before we close up, I add one thing. What's going through my mind is how many constituents, well, not constituents, but community members and people in the city of Providence, so forth and so on, actually know about this advisory council.
Not a lot.
And so that's something that should be noted, because they should know that the work is being done, because that's always the argument. Nothing's happening. You guys aren't doing things behind the scenes. And I think that would be really good.
That's it. I grew up some of what you're doing for moms, but I noticed this morning that Providence I was talking about, which sends out an email, many, especially for progressive members of our city, about what's going on and said we'd like to increase their coverage of city hall meetings and sort of things. So you might decide, what would we like more of the public to know? We would contact Providence Eye, and in their email newsletter, they would let people know about our meeting and what we want the public to know about, whether it's an ask for more volunteers for one of our particular programs, or what we want the public to know about us.
I think that would be good.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone has any ideas, on that, definitely.
The mayor does a newsletter as well, so it should probably be in that every month also.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's it, I would love to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Have a good day.
I just wanna check here to make sure I have the right email.
Everyone, have a good one.
Thanks for